Welcome, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm Joanne Brazington in Marketing and Communications for Wofford College, and I'll be monitoring the Q&A and chat during this event, along with my colleague Dudley Brown, the college's Director of Communications. We have several pre-submitted questions, but we will try to take additional questions at the end if we have time. This event will last 45 minutes. If you cannot stay for the entire webinar, we will post a link in the next Conquer and Prevail e-newsletter and make the recording available on the college's YouTube channel. Special thanks for the support of this event goes to Martin Agner and Kay Foster in Information Technology Services and the team in Marketing and Communications. Sharing the preliminary report from the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Strategic Vision Steering Committee are co-chairs, Dr. Christine Dinkins, William R. Keenan Professor of Philosophy, and Dr. Ramon Galiñanes, Director of Undergraduate Research and Postgraduate Fellowships. Also with us are student representatives to JEDI, Dylan Goshorn, a junior international affairs and philosophy major from St. George, South Carolina, and Journey Jones, a senior government and sociology and anthropology major from Bluffton, South Carolina. Thank you all for sharing the report with the Wofford community. Let's begin. Dr. Galiñanes.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I appreciate it, and thank you all for joining us today. We are, excited to be sharing our process and some of the results as well. We have Dr. Dinkins. I don't know if you'd like to say a few things. We do have a PowerPoint that we're going to share to give folks just a visual of what we've been doing and the committee as well. But Dr. Dinkins, would you like to say a few things as well?
Sure. Thank you, Ramon. We just want to thank everybody for being here and thank you for all the interest we've received in this work, and it helps speed us in our work to do all of this. So thank you for being here, and we look forward to talking with you all today.
All right, one thing that I think it's important to keep in context in terms of the charge of the JEDI committee, the role of the steering committee is focused on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, is to recommend to the Wofford College Board of Trustees a strategic plan and vision for an equitable and just Wofford for the future. The committee's work includes collecting and reporting relevant disaggregated data, facilitating listening sessions with a variety of stakeholder groups, amplifying and building on equity work already being done, and helping build and sustain an equity-focused and equity-informed culture at Wofford.
And we wanted to talk a little bit about what guides the work of the committee in addition to the research we're doing, which we'll say more about in a few minutes. We are very much making sure our work is tied to the mission statement of Wofford and also the core values. So for instance, in the mission statement, Wofford wanting to foster commitment to excellence in character, performance, leadership, service to others, and lifelong learning. That's very much tied in with the work we're doing in terms of justice and equity and diversity and inclusion. And then we're also very aware of the core values and making sure that they are informing our work and also that they will be able to be seen in our work. In the report that we'll be issuing in May, in our recommendations, we want to stick as closely to these core values as possible because we realize these are core values that all in the Wofford community share and want us to uphold.
So the committee consists of 16 members. There are 4 members of the Board of Trustees. There are members of the faculty. There are members of the professional staff. There are students. It includes folks from different disciplines, from different generations, so it is it's a very diverse group. And I would, if Journey would like to, who's on the JEDI committee, would like to just say a few things about her experience from as a student. So Journey, please share a little bit.
Well, now that I'm a senior, I've been reflecting on my time at Wofford a lot, and kind of from the moment I got on campus, I was really committed to continuing what I'd done to get to this point, which was feeling strongly about advocating for my fellow students. So I've spent a good amount of time, all of my years actually, on the campus union student government assembly in various capacities. And I've spent some time on the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, which has parlayed into this. And so I've been really happy and excited to see the progress that we've been able to make and that we're committed to making moving forward. This has been a really great culminating experience for me as a senior.
Thank you, Journey. Dylan, could you share a little bit as well?
Yeah, sure. So, so me just being just being in this group since past August, getting to talk to students outside and just coming back and just speaking to all the members about, what students are thinking, what students are feeling going on. This past summer was a very tough time, I think, for students, and it was a lot of needs that I think students feel like that weren't being held up to. I think that this committee has done a great job of bringing all voices into like into that light, because there's a lot of issues that need to take focus. But I just had just an honor to represent students and to have those tough discussions, and then to get to close people and talk about what things really do need to change, and then going back to students and being, okay, this is how this process is going to work. And so there's a lot more that needs to get done, but this process has been great. And I think it's really going to change Wofford.
Thank you, Dylan. I appreciate that. Now the other thing about the committee, there are 5 working groups. I am a member of Working Group 1, History, Memory, and Place. That group also includes Dr. Dwayne Pruitt, Dr. Tracy Rebels, Dr. Philip Stone, as well as members of Ron Robinson and Costa Placonis. There's Working Group 2, focused on curriculum, teaching, and advising. There's Working Group 3, focused on student life. Working Group 4, focused on enrollment, recruitment, and marketing. And Working Group 5, policies, procedures, and JEDI structure. These working groups have been doing some research and doing also some benchmarking with peer institutions, and that has been an important part of the JEDI process as well.
So we want to tell you a little bit about our timeline and a little more detail on what the process has been. And we took a couple of months to get going as a committee. We started, I believe, late August. And a lot of our work has been in the working groups that you just heard about from Dr. Galananis. And also, we have been doing listening sessions and surveys. And we've invited alumni, current students, faculty, staff, other groups related to the college to participate in all of that. So we've had simultaneously that going on, getting in all that input from so much of the Wofford community, which we're grateful for, while the working groups also do their research. And the working group research is coming from looking at peer and aspirant institutions, looking at institutional data, best practices, lots of different things to inform the work of the committee. We did present our preliminary report to the Board of Trustees at their February meeting. That is what you are mostly hearing about today. We do want to emphasize preliminary report. Our comprehensive report will be in May. We are still very much taking in input. We are still thinking about things, but these were some initial findings that we had from the research we had done so far, in addition to some preliminary recommendations that we passed on to the board, and we will be sharing with those with you in a few minutes. All of that work is then combining into informing our strategic visioning process, which we just very recently started in earnest, in order to come up with a strategic vision for Wofford, for a just and equitable Wofford for the future. informed by that research. So here's a little snippet of where we are in this work process. We've conducted 46 listening sessions. We still have a few more to go, including our community conversation sessions. And we're also making sure we have gotten surveys in from any groups that we intended to include, but maybe didn't have easy access yet. So we're checking on all of that. The working group work is continuing. We do have in a lot of surveys, which we're very, very happy about and grateful to those of you who took the time. And then our committee meetings are ongoing as well.
So for this, at the February Board of Trustees meeting, we presented preliminary results, but we also made a few recommendations that came out largely from some of the work that the working groups were focused on. And the first recommendation is to hire a cabinet level vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion to oversee all DEI initiatives, support the Title IX and bias incident functions, and have an advisory role over hiring practices. And also in this role have appropriate staffing to support these structures. I think this is a great opportunity and one that many of our peer institutions have. And, so we are very excited about that recommendation.
And very much going hand in hand with that first recommendation, we also recommended increased budget and staffing for our Office of Diversity Inclusion. That office has been absolutely essential in always at Wofford since it existed, but especially this last year, helping our students with everything that they are dealing with in this national moment and on campus. So we recommended to the board increased budget and staffing for that office, but also other DEI areas as well. And while the exact staffing and structures and what they'll look like are going to be determined by the president and other members of the cabinet, what we wanted to emphasize in our recommendations was that we know there's a specific need for expertise in National Panhellenic Council organizations. These are Greek organizations supporting our BIPOC students, partly because we know so much from our data we have coming in from listening sessions and surveys how important Greek life is on campus. And so we want to make sure that if it's that important on campus, everybody can be included and supported in that. So we're recommending expertise and somebody with time to devote to that. And also we need somebody with time and expertise for DEI matters in athletics, somebody who could work with our student athletes, work with staff in athletics as well, to make sure that they're being a liaison to the rest of campus on those sorts of issues. And then our third recommendation, this is something that is already ongoing at Wofford. We are simply recommending that it continue, and I'm happy to report we've already heard it will be continuing. That this is the Teach Equity Now program. We currently have a cohort of 20 fellows at Wofford, faculty and staff, who are participating in that. The feedback from those involved in the program is overwhelmingly positive in terms of how supportive, how relevant, how informative this process is, and particularly because it's a cohort. It's not just experts coming in and talking at people. It's helping people work together to inform themselves on how to teach in equitable ways, teach about equity, work with our students in advising capacities in ways that are equitable, and all of that. So we're very happy that the Wofford intends to continue with that kind of program.
The fourth recommendation we made at the February Board of Trustees meeting is to join the University Studying Slavery Consortium. This is a consortium that includes a number of colleges from around the country. And there are several of our faculty members that are very much interested in participating in this group. Slavery was a, for at Wofford, it played an important role, and there's still lots of questions that we need to be addressed regarding our college's ties to slavery. So for instance, when it comes to President Carlisle One enslaved person that was owned was Nancy, and there's a lot that we don't know about her life, and so joining this consortium would be a good opportunity to get a better sense of that part of Wofford's history. The other recommendation at the February Board of Trustees meeting that we made was to establish a fund to create historical markers, plaques, creative digital displays, and a new Wofford history book to authentically acknowledge and engage Wofford's past and tell an inclusive story that highlights the complex lived experiences of women, people of color, and other historically underrepresented groups that have helped make Wofford what it is today. So that recommendation, I think, is a great opportunity to think of using history to build community, to recognize people, and think of ways to continue having a college campus that is inclusive, right? So when folks come to this campus, they feel that their story is part of Wofford's story, right? And I know there's already been some work done in this area, but this recommendation will continue helping in that area. And this is one of a few recommendations that came out of Working Group 1, and there's still a number that we are still working on right now.
So we labeled this as our emerging themes from the listening sessions and surveys. Again, I do want to emphasize this is preliminary. This is a bit of a snapshot of where we were with the data when we reported to the board in February. We already have more themes than this that are going to be in our final report. But this is a pretty good snapshot of the kind of things we're hearing, and we're hearing quite consistently from students and alumni and faculty and staff and other constituents that are invested in Wofford. So the sense of Wofford as a community, that it's the people that make Wofford in terms of students' experiences while they're here and employees' experiences. The importance of Wofford tradition and the variety of ways we can think about those traditions. Valuing Wofford as a place for strong academics and a place for growth intellectually, emotionally, socially. The importance of the physical campus. We have consistently heard, especially from alumni looking back on their time on campus, but also from students, about how having certain spaces that they have access to or feeling left out of certain spaces makes a big difference in how people feel welcome and included at Wofford. We've seen different experiences of students and alumni varying by decade and identity. So this sense of Wofford as a community is very much in common, but we also see significant differences within that in terms of, say, people who felt less included in that community, or people who felt they struggled more to find, say, relationships with professors and staff. We've been hearing about a need to shift the campus culture and the larger Wofford culture, meaning Wofford alumni, Wofford community conversations, for more of an understanding of issues about justice and equity and diversity. And concerns about sustainability and recruitment, that if Wofford is going to continue to thrive and be a strong liberal arts college, and we've been doing very well during the pandemic, and we're all grateful for that, those of us who work here. But if we're looking to our future to make sure that we can continue to recruit the best students and recruit them across all sorts of diversity, racial diversity, geographic, first generation students, economic diversity, all of that as part of the sustainability of Wofford going into the future. And then we have some data also about perceptions and communication concerns. Some of this is alumni who have not been as in touch with what's happening on campus, perhaps having the wrong perception of what's happening on campus. Some of it is people wanting more clear or more frequent communication from college leadership on issues having to do with justice and equity. And so we're looking at all of that as well. So These are the next steps we are looking at right now. We presented these 5 preliminary recommendations to the board, and then after that held a meeting with Dr. Samhat. Our committee has been informed that all 5 of these recommendations are moving forward. Some are already underway. And so we ask that you look for updates from Wofford soon, where you'll hear more details on implementation of these recommendations, and there'll be more specifics coming on that implementation. Meanwhile, the work of our committee continues. We are well into our visioning work, but we have a long way to go yet, and things that we are still doing in terms of soliciting feedback and input. We still have our community conversations to go, other groups that we've not had a chance to hear from yet that we want to make sure we hear from as many people as possible to inform our visioning before we start moving even close to making specific recommendations for our May report. The working groups are still continuing their research as well to inform that process. And what we are all getting this work ready for is there will be a board meeting in May, and we will present our comprehensive report then on all of this research from the listening sessions and the surveys and the working groups, from the visioning process and recommendations. All of that will be presented to the board in May, along with a cohesive strategic vision for justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. After we have presented to the board, we will have a second town hall, much like we are having today, to present to anybody who wants to hear about it, what the report is, what our research found, and what the next steps may be at that point.
All right, thank you. We will, at this point, I will hand it back to Joanne. And she has, I believe she has some questions for us. Oh, Joanne, we can't hear you.
I love it when I do that. This first question is directed to our students. What has participating in the process meant to you? How have you benefited from the experience, and how has your service contributed to the college? Which of you wants to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, so I mean, personally for me, as a white male at Wofford, I realized that my experiences thus far at Wofford aren't the same as other students. And as a student leader, I thought that it is my job to advocate for those students who feel that their voices aren't being heard. And, we've heard that outcry this past year. And just Black at Wofford really highlighted all the stories that, students were experiencing Wofford, for the past year and still now. And so I felt like that it was part of my job to stand up for those students. And it's been an honor just to work on this group each week, talking about Wofford and just kind of digging in and just trying to figure out the overlapping issues that Wofford faces right now. I feel like this past year I've learned so much of like just how Wofford works. And I feel like going forward that I know who to talk to and, what issues need to be faced first. But for me, it's been a really, at times, hard experience. At times it's been really, it's been really hopeful at times. But I think that through this process, however, some students may think that, it's been slow at times and things aren't really getting done. I've been in those discussions and I've tried to convey that best I can. But I think that having a journey and I on here advocating for students each week, I'm really confident that this work that we're doing is going to make actual change at Wofford. And I'm confident that hopefully next May, this May, that there can be a lot of big changes and that we can start to see some really permanent changes.
I would echo much of what Dylan has conveyed so well. I think it has been a really rewarding experience to be on this committee, particularly as someone who was a little bit skeptical of it, like most of the students I know, kind of being told to trust the process and not really knowing what that looks like. I think it's been great to be able to be a part of this process and really understand it, and to help be a part of the group really refining it and making sure that it is as effective as possible. I know that Dylan and I are not the only people on the committee really concerned about the students' needs and the students' voices. But we really do find that to be our charge on the committee, to convey how students are feeling, positive and negative, and everything in between. And I think that has been a really rewarding experience for us all. I'm always really happy when I can be in the company of the people on this committee, because I'm learning, but I'm also able to contribute in a way that makes me feel like an equal. And hopefully that's an experience that'll continue in life and that I can provide for other people, having been a part of something as collaborative as the JEDI committee. And as far as my service to the campus, hopefully that's not even something that I can really quantify. I really hope that beyond this committee and beyond my time at Wofford, I can continue to contribute in ways that continue to lift our college and really make it what it can be.
Thank you both. All right, next question. Have you found evidence that Wofford is deliberately discriminating or that Wofford has a problem with systemic racism? Dr. Dinkins, would you please respond to this one?
Yes, thank you very much, Joanne. And I very quick follow-up to what Journey was just saying. I also want to say we are learning from y'all on this committee. Journey and Dylan have been amazing, and we learn a lot from the insights they share with us as well. So it goes both ways. Yeah, in terms of the question of, right, evidence we found that Wofford's, I think it was deliberately discriminating, or that Wofford has a problem with systemic racism. So yeah, I think it's important to understand that Wofford is part of a larger system in which there is systemic racism. So it's not so much that we're trying to look at what Wofford might be deliberately doing as acknowledging what Wofford is part of in that larger system. So a system of systemic racism, white supremacy, and also other kinds of inequity such as homophobia, systems that limit who has access to generational wealth, increase, and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, Ramon, would you mind going back to screen sharing and all? There's an illustration we have for this to talk about. Thank you. I think it's our last slide. There we go. Yeah, thank you. So I find this set of pictures helpful to think about this question, that if you look at the inequality part of this in the top left, this is the system in which Wofford finds itself, and there's nothing we can do about that right now. This is the system. So nobody is saying Wofford is, I don't think anybody is saying Wofford is deliberately bending the apple tree toward white students or students of some other group. But we do know we exist within a system where certain students have already had more accessible pathways to success academically than other students have, for instance. And so if we find ourselves in that situation, one way to approach that would be to make sure we have equality. So our sense working on this committee is, by and large, of course we have equality at Wofford. An institution with our values, one would hope so, but that's not necessarily everything that we need to be doing. So just to pick like a really basic example, I'm a professor, and so I hold office hours. I can say to my students on my syllabus, I have office hours, these 6 hours every week, feel free to drop by. That is treating all my students equally. I'm certainly not saying just to the white students or just to the straight students or just to those who have, American citizenship, you can come to my office hours. I'm saying it to all of my students, but we have plenty of research in the higher ed literature to tell us that, for instance, first generation college students who have not had someone in their family go to college before them, feel much less comfortable coming to office hours. They feel less able to be assertive in seeking help from the professor. So that means it's my job to make sure that I'm putting in place structures that will actually reach all of my students. So it's not that I necessarily need to give extra help or extra accommodations to someone. It's that I want to make sure whatever I'm doing as a teacher is going to be equitable in the sense that I'm acknowledging the inequality that might be coming into that picture. And so that's what we're hoping to aim for at Wofford in this work, is equity in the sense that we want to make sure everybody has the same chance to succeed, the same chance at opportunities, and we want to structure things in such a way so that we can help make that happen. And eventually, hopefully, we're dreaming big and making sure Wofford is also part of helping fix the larger system, helping, partnering with the Spartanburg community, partnering in global ways, some of which is already happening at Wofford, to help make for a more just world overall in addressing these initial inequities.
Thank you. All right, let's see. What steps did JEDI take to ensure diversity in the process and that all voices were heard? This one is for you, Dr. Galianis.
All right, thank you, Joanne. That's a good question. Well, a few things. I mean, the listening sessions were a great opportunity to hear from people. It was also the listening sessions were great opportunities to build, in addition to collecting data, just to build bridges, right? To have communication with current faculty and staff and alumni. So in addition to the listening sessions, we've surveyed lots of folks, and they still have opportunities to complete a survey if needed. We received letters from different groups that the committee has looked at. So we've tried to reach out to the entire Wofford community and give everyone an opportunity to share. And this is what we've collected as a steering group. So I think those have been, and also the other thing I'll say, the committee itself represents different generations and folks that everyone could feel comfortable engaging with, or at least I feel. So that's been a way to make sure that we've had an inclusive process.
Okay, thank you. All right, another question. How were the preliminary findings developed in a non-biased way from the feedback? Dr. Dinkins, this one's for you.
Thank you. Yes. So how are the findings developed in a non-biased way? Yeah, and I'm happy to speak to that partly also from my expertise as a qualitative researcher, because this is something we're trained to be very careful about, is not introducing bias into the system. So this is very much a research-driven process. We have the working groups doing all of the research that they're doing, which includes pouring through institutional data, data from peer and aspirant institutions, data from higher ed literature on best practices. We have all of the data coming in from the listening sessions and the surveys. And before I say more about that, I do want to pause to make sure I acknowledge the tremendous work in helping the committee with this. We have got 3 alumna helping us with that research process. Dr. Deborah Johnson-Ross is our senior consultant and is helping oversee the qualitative research process and the strategic visioning. And Caitlin Meyer, who has a master's in education, very recent Wofford alumna, is organizing and overseeing all the data, which there's a massive amount of coming in from our listening sessions and surveys. And we have Kathleen Hughes working on specific parts of that as well as our qualitative data analyst. And we have a team of 11 current students who are on our JEDI team as our researchers. They have done a tremendous job participating in the listening sessions. They have helped come up with all of the themes from the data that they were seeing in the data. And by data, I mean listening sessions and surveys. They are coding all of that to put it in an organized fashion for us to share with the committee. It's a tremendous amount of skilled work that they had to learn how to do very quickly, and they're amazing. So I want to make sure I acknowledge their part in that process. And that process that they're part of is what's helping us make sure this is a process that is authentic and doesn't have biases coming into it from the beginning. One thing I will say is that the qualitative data, what we're hearing from the listening sessions and surveys, is remarkably consistent. Not that different people don't have different experiences, but it's consistent on priorities. It's consistent on what's important to people, like the importance of Greek life on campus, like the importance of forming relationships during that time, finding it a place for personal growth and intellectual growth. We hear these things just incredibly consistently. And we also hear very consistently from alumni of difference, whether that's BIPOC students or students who identify as LGBT, students who may be DACA recipients. We hear from them ways in which they are feeling left out of some of the things that everybody agrees are important, to the extent that, for instance, the stories on the Black at Wofford Instagram feed are not outliers. They are fitting with what we're hearing from the listening sessions and surveys. So all of that fits together to inform our process. And then it's also worth noting, Dr. Galananis already mentioned the diversity of backgrounds and affiliations with the college that we have on the committee. There is overwhelming consensus from the committee on our preliminary report and on the recommendations. We would not have gone forward with it had there not been. So the recommendations have either unanimous or nearly unanimous, with some abstains on all of the recommendations and the way the report has been put together. And that also makes us feel confident that we are moving in line with what our research is informing us to do and what everybody's understanding of what's best for Wofford is as well.
Thank you. All right, next question. How were JEDI committee members chosen? Who chose them? What were the criteria to be selected to serve on the committee? If you don't mind, I'd like to take this one and give everyone just a little context about how this started as well. This past summer, our community was reeling, much like colleges and universities all across the country. We were trying to mitigate the damage of coronavirus, keeping students, faculty, staff safe and well, while continuing our mission and staying true to our core values. We were also committed to maintaining employment for everyone, which is no small feat during a pandemic. And looking back, we were really successful. I'm proud to say that, thanks to the concerted effort from faculty, staff, students, parents, alumni, the community. At the same time last summer, the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others struck a painful blow across the country. For most of us, it was tragic and heartbreaking, but for others, it was more personal because of a layer of fear and frustration that I just don't have or understand because of my skin color. Our Black students and other students of color needed a place to share their personal experiences of pain, things that have happened right here on Wofford's campus. Black at Wofford was created on Instagram, and on that site are 244 posts and even more comments, and that's not all. President Sam Hatt and other campus leaders, including me, received emails sharing personal incidents of racism and injustice. Let's just say you're a dentist or an accountant, and hundreds of your clients share personal stories of times when someone on your staff was insensitive or dismissive or threatening. Would you ignore those? Some people would have us do just that, but that's not who we are. Wofford College is a vibrant community with more positive stories than I'll ever know, and I'm the one responsible for sharing those stories. But at the same time, Wofford is not perfect, and some good old-fashioned self-examination, tying back to our Methodist roots, has been in order. President Sam Hatt was wise enough to recognize that, so he formed a new strategic vision steering committee to research, study, debate, solicit feedback from many, many people, and consider where Wofford's been, where it is now, and where it needs to go to continue to thrive in the future. As far as how the people were selected, well, the president also really knows our community well. And he formed a 16-member committee made up of 4 trustees, all of whom are graduates, 5 tenured faculty members, 5 members of the professional staff, and 2 students. They were chosen because they're smart. They represented varying generations, backgrounds, responsibilities, interests. They also are people who care deeply about Wofford College and Wofford students. Accepting service on this committee also meant being willing to put in an inordinate amount of time to see this process through to completion with fairness and civility. The committee asked for support, and Dr. Dinkins has just told you all about our consultants and researchers and awesome students. They have all been a tremendous asset. And by the way, you can find all their names at wofford.edu/strategic vision, and their bios there as well, putting in a plug for the website. So here we are. And frankly, I think we owe everyone who has volunteered their time to this effort a big old debt of gratitude. So thanks. Next question. Is there a concern that the voluntary anti-racism programming in the co-curriculum and the unconscious bias and National Coalition Building Institute training in the 1 credit hour FYI, or basically how to succeed in college courses, are creating polarization instead of unity? Dr. Galianis, would you please respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Well, I realize that there is that concern among some folks. I will say that I'm a member of the NCBI team. I've participated in different training sessions this past year, but even in previous years. Even I remember a few years ago with Journey Jones. Actually, we led some training sessions with FYI classes, and actually I led one for Dean Roberta Hurley's course. And in terms of NCBI training, we did leadership pairs, coalitions, and I see them as good opportunities for self-reflection. As new students to the community, I think it provides good opportunities for growth. I think it's a really important experience for our students. The other thing I'll say is that we are there are a number of ideas that are still very present on Wofford's campus. We, as a liberal arts college, our students are exposed to all sorts of ideas, right? And even, in previous years, I've taken students to Washington, D.C., and we would meet, we met with the late John Lewis, but we would also meet with Lindsey Graham, Trey Gowdy, Will Timmons. And so, that spirit of engagement with ideas is still very present at Wofford. And the other thing, and also recently too, I know President Sam Haddon, the board, has agreed with the Chicago principles on freedom of speech. One thing, having been on so many listening sessions, it's been a great opportunity to learn Wofford's history. And one thing that I found very interesting during the Harding presidency, they brought in a witch. I mean, like there were some pretty radical ideas that were presented to Wofford students, and I think and that's a tradition we continue, and I think that is when we're at our best, right? Again, I understand that some folks there's concerns, but just please keep in mind that there are a number they're not the only ideas in town. There are lots of ideas that are exchanged and expressed here at Wofford.
Okay, we have a question that just came in. This graduate attended a listening session for grads from the 1970s. There were just a few fellow grads participating, but they would like to know how much input and participation did you receive from grads from several decades ago? Dr. Dinkins, would you answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I would say not as much as we would have liked, but more than we were afraid we would get. I do want to emphasize we sent out invitations for the survey and for the listening sessions to every single alum that we had the email for. We checked very carefully with Joanne's office and the advancement office to make sure we were reaching everybody. Do keep in mind we have many more surveys than we do participants in the listening sessions. A lot of people chose to participate that way. It was the same questions, but it was for some people that was a more efficient way to give us their feedback. We did have quite a few listening sessions devoted to alumni from the 70s and 60s. And in fact, for various reasons, I think we ended up having a couple more of those, so they were more dispersed. So yeah, we had a good amount of feedback, I would say, from all decades of alumni, which we were grateful for.
Okay, thank you. We've had a number of questions that we didn't get to. So if you ask a question, we have captured those along with your name, and we will respond in the next day or two. So look for an email. And if you don't get one, email me, pester me, and we'll get back with you. Thank you to our panelists, the entire JEDI steering committee, student researchers and consultants for your service to the college and for a really informative report. Thanks also to everyone who joined us this afternoon and who has been a part of this process. Well done, Terriers. Thanks and have a good evening.